There are times on a boat when if you don't have a second sink might come in handy. What do you do if you don't happen to have a second sink? Hi, I'm Nika Waters, and welcome to the Boat Galley podcast. I'm talking about a solution that we found that takes the need for a second sink out of the equation entirely. Today's episode of the Boat Galley podcast is sponsored by MantisMarine.com, maker of the Mantis Anchor, now available in models with and without a roll bar. Proven to set reliably in the most challenging bottoms, the Mantis Anchor digs like no other, making anchoring safer and boating more enjoyable. Mantis Marine brings to market practical, durable, and affordable marine products, including anchoring gear, scuba diving accessories, and a rechargeable waterproof headlamp for hands-free lighting. Visit MantisMarine.com and see for yourself. I'll be the first to admit that I am not a fan of double sinks. I don't like them in a house, and I really don't like them on a boat. I would much rather have big space in which to soak pans and work comfortably. And yeah, it's true that this might be my opinion because I've been on way too many boats with way too many double sinks that barely had room to fit a coffee cup, and you couldn't even fit a plate in it without some really major creative splashing around. And so maybe if you've got a bigger boat and you've got double sinks that actually are big enough to put things into, then this doesn't apply to you. But Carolyn made a point in a podcast pretty recently with an idea from a reader who talked about using one side of her double sink as a dish drainer. And that might be the best reason to have a double sink in my very, very limited experience and knowing that I'm not a fan of double sinks. But to be able to have your dish drainer in there with no water going everywhere, there's no counter space required, dishes can't go flying, that's actually kind of a useful thing for a double sink. And we don't have a double sink on Calypso. We don't have a space for a double sink, and I wouldn't choose one anyway. But I will say that dish drying on Calypso over the years has definitely gone through iterations. We used to line the stovetop with a bath towel and lay dishes on top of that. Yeah, that's great. The stove gimbals. It's a big space. There's some semblance of racks. But no, it wasn't great because it traps water on the stovetop. We tried a drying mat. Just lay it out on the counter next to the sink. That's great because the mat's super easy to stow. It's not great in that a drying mat, it just doesn't allow for efficient airflow. In the morning, and usually what I do is I let my dishes dry overnight and then I put them away in the morning. And in the morning, those dishes that were on that mat, they would need a thorough rub with a towel to get dry. That's not my point in air drying. Just to let you know, I'm kind of lazy when it comes to dish drying that way. Finally, I decided, fine, heck with it. I got to use up the space, and I bought a dish rack. Then I used the drying mat underneath it. And that solved the whole issue of decent airflow. But not great, because if we were sailing somewhere, I couldn't just leave the rack out there on the drying mat to do what it was going to do. Then we decided, what about putting a dishpan that the dish rack could fit into? It's a deep plastic tub, and it holds the dish rack securely. It really behaves pretty much as that second sink. We can wedge that plastic tub anywhere. I can stick it in between the side of the settee and the table where it can't move. I could stick it in a corner of the cockpit. I could stick it in a corner of the quarter berth. Who knows? But it can be wedged anywhere. There's no water left under a drying mat. Okay, yes, space-wise, it's a little bit tough to store my two separate pieces like that. They do actually fit under our sink with a little bit of maneuvering and wiggling around the sink-through hull. The biggest challenge, honestly, was finding a rack that fit into the dish tub like that. And it was not something that I think you could do online. I think it would be really hard to do. Maybe you're better at envisioning when they give you dimensions, how it's going to actually work. I'm terrible at that. I don't care how much measuring I do. I can't effectively tell what's going to fit in something else. Maybe you don't have that challenge. Great. If you don't, then go ahead, shop online. But the problem with the tub and rack combinations that you see, because sometimes you'll see a dish drying rack and a pan or shallow like holder of something, those are really shallow, or they're self-draining. The idea is that you're putting that rack and pan, in a quotation marks, onto the counter with it going straight into the sink. So if the idea of having a dishpan that the dish rack could fit into to behave as a second sink that you can put anywhere you want to, that might be something that you might want to spend some time at Target or Walmart or some other not expensive store of your choice trying different combinations. I wound up having to go from, I think, the laundry area to the dish area and going across aisles holding the different racks that I had. You might also find a dish pan, which is called a bus pan, at a restaurant supply store, and that might be bigger and easier to deal with. We've found this to be a really spectacular solution for us for dish drying. Yes, I still have my drying mat, and I still use the drying mat in combination with the drying rack fairly frequently. But I'll tell you, when I don't want to worry about my dishes going flying and I'm a little too lazy to dry them and put them immediately away, having that dish pan with the dish rack fitting securely in it is a really spectacular solution for us and doesn't require giving up space for a second sink. I can't wait to share an Anchorage with you when we're not talking about drying dishes, because we're too busy enjoying this incredible lifestyle we get to enjoy. Thank you so much for listening to the Boat Galley podcast. We love hearing from our listeners. We love it when you share us with your friends, and we love it when you don't forget to subscribe in your favorite podcast app. Have the most spectacular day.